So Mega Dragonite was recently revealed, and it caused quite a stir. It seems that its design is quite divisive overall, so in the spirit of that discussion, I thought it would be fun to go over what I believe to be the worst Mega Evolutions ever. We're gonna go ahead and just get right into it, but there are a couple of disclaimers that are worth mentioning before we begin. First, this concerns the Mega Evolutions that we know of as of the making of this video. We will be getting some new ones in Legend ZA obviously, but for now, this is where I am at with the current Megas. And for what it's worth, I do also plan on covering the new Megas in a separate video as well once ZA comes out. The second thing I wanted to mention is that this is obviously just my opinion, so it's not that serious. And then third, this list was actually very hard to put together because there aren't really any Megas that I outright despise or have strong negative feelings for. So if your favorite happens to end up on this list, it's not like I hate it or anything. With all of that said though, let's go ahead and begin in classic top 10 fashion, and at number 10, we have Mega Audino. Now, from where I sit, this feels like it should be somewhat expected, because it doesn't seem like Mega Audino is enjoyed all that much in general, and for what it's worth, I've honestly never really understood that. I wouldn't say its design is bad by any means, and as a matter of fact, at the time it was released, it was basically one of the only Pokemon not from the first couple of generations to get a new form like this, which made it kinda unique and interesting. And it also gains a new type upon Mega Evolving and becomes part Fairy as well. So overall, I feel like it kind of goes under the radar because Audino in general kind of goes under the radar, but in terms of what you want out of a Mega, it really does have pretty much everything you could ask for. With that said, the reason why it still makes this list, at least for me, is just because there is a lot of stiff competition in the Mega Evolution department. Like, it's hard to be ranked very high for a Pokemon like Mega Audino when you've got Pokemon like Mega Charizard X, Mega Mewtwo Y, Mega Gyarados, Mega Houndoom, and Mega Absol to contend with, just to name a few. So, as I alluded to, I wouldn't call it bad, it just doesn't measure up to the competition in my opinion. At number 9, we have Mega Tyranitar. This is another one that, based on what I personally hear and see online, it doesn't seem like Mega Tyranitar is very popular either, despite Tyranitar itself being absolutely beloved. From what I hear, I think a lot of people just feel like it has a clunky design that hinders Tyranitar's appearance rather than helps it. And while I would agree with that to a degree, I feel like it gets more hate than it actually deserves. First, when just straight up looking at its Sugimori artwork, I would actually say that despite the criticism, it still looks really cool. If I were to give my own criticism though, I would say that the design definitely feels a bit stiff. Like, with the way its arms are positioned and with the additions to its body in general, it sort of reminds me of the way people look when they wear those inflatable sumo wrestler costumes, which doesn't exactly mesh very well with the cool and fierce vibes that Tyranitar is going for. With that said though, it's got a pretty dang good reason for looking that way, because the Pokédex mentions how Tyranitar's back splits open while Mega Evolving. And if you just had your back forcefully split open, you would probably look like that too. So while it does lose some points for that kind of awkward look, in my opinion, it does also gain some of them back for its absolutely metal backstory. No pun intended, which is enough to keep it on the higher end of this list. Coming in at number 8, we have Mega Sableye. This one is kind of an interesting case because, visually speaking, there isn't really anything wrong with how Mega Sableye looks. However, what I have a bit of a problem with is how it looks compared to its base form, which is essentially exactly the same. From a design perspective, there just isn't enough of a change in design here for me to be able to get very excited about this Mega, and that is something I feel today and remember very vividly feeling when this Pokemon was first revealed. In fact, the thing that changes the most here out of everything to do with the Pokemon is the gemstone and not actually Sableye itself. Although, this is where this Mega's saving grace comes in, because according to the Pokedex, this gem is the same one that sits in Sableye's chest, and the energy of Mega Evolution causes it to grow in size and then rip out of its skin. So again, the Pokedex is definitely giving these Pokemon some street cred, because you can really only be ranked so low when you've got something like this going for you. At number 7, I have got Mega Camerupt. Now, I have never once really had any kind of issue with this Pokemon myself, but upon closer inspection and when comparing it to all of the other Megas it's going up against, it doesn't really stand much of a chance. Looks-wise, I wouldn't say it's terrible or anything, but like with Mega Audino, it doesn't really stand much of a chance against things like Mega Garchomp, Mega Diancie, or Mega Blaziken. And in kinda going along with that, its appearance kinda gives off this goofy sort of vibe that, to me, makes it hard to tell if it's trying to be tough or actually just be goofy. Being goofy and silly on its own definitely isn't a bad thing, but I kind of feel like Mega Camerupt is stuck between goofy and tough, which kind of just makes for a negative result overall, in my opinion. At number 6 is a pretty infamous Mega Evolution, and that is Mega Slowbro. Of all of the Mega Evolutions, I would say that Mega Slowbro is pretty easily the derpiest, which is the biggest thing it has going against it. With that said though, it's not really a bad thing at all that it's derpy, because the entire Slowpoke family are a bunch of derps, and so it's totally fitting and applicable for Mega Slowbro to have this goofy, ridiculous design. But at the end of the day, it does fall into the same category that some of these other Pokemon have fallen into, and that is that it just doesn't really stand a chance against all of the other amazing Mega designs that are out there. And since Mega Slowbro leans even harder on the ridiculous and goofy angle, it feels like it's even harder for it to stand up to other designs that have such insane amounts of popularity and appeal. I am also taking a bit of public perception into consideration on this one, because Mega Slowbro definitely caught a lot of flack when it was first revealed, and I feel like even today it does tend to get the short end of the stick in the opinion department, so that is why it ended up at this point on the list. For number 5, I have Mega Venusaur, and it is in the middle of this list because naturally I do not think that it is the absolute worst, and I want to emphasize that because the way I am going to describe my feelings for it is not gonna sound very pretty. I basically am putting Mega Venusaur here because of the fact that it's more of Venusaur. In terms of what it adds to itself as a Mega, I would say it's solid. It's nothing great, but it's nothing bad either. But again, the problem for me is that it's just Venusaur, but more. And what I mean by that is that I wasn't much of a fan of Venusaur to begin with, so giving me even more of it is just giving me even more to not like. The main thing for me is that Venusaur has always been kind of an uglier Pokemon, and yes, that is just my own opinion, but I feel like it's also an ugly Pokemon that is not trying to be ugly. So it's not like something like Garbodor, where that is the whole point of its design. So basically, it's unintentionally ugly, and then when it Mega Evolves, it just emphasizes that unintentionally ugly quality that just doesn't do it for me. I wouldn't say the Mega itself really does anything wrong in terms of its execution. It's basically just more of a Pokemon that I don't really care too much for to begin with. And in the end, that is what puts Mega Venusaur at this spot on my list. Now number 4 might be a bit surprising because my number 4 is Mega Mewtwo X. This ranking definitely doesn't have anything to do with stats because Mega Mewtwo X is actually tied for being the strongest Pokemon of all time at this current moment, outside of only Eternamax Eternatus, who obviously isn't even obtainable. So it has no problems whatsoever in the strength department, but at least for me, it does have some problems elsewhere. Like, for instance, in the looks department. If we compare Mega Mewtwo X to Mega Mewtwo Y, Mega Mewtwo Y absolutely blows X out of the water, to the point that for me, it actively makes Mega Mewtwo X's design worse just out of pure comparison. For me, this feeling also probably has a lot to do with the fact that I played Pokemon X when those games first came out, and I can still remember how robbed I felt upon learning that the amazing Mega Mewtwo Y would be exclusive to Y version, while the X version both felt and looked like a huge afterthought. So this one I definitely am more in my feelings about, and I will fully admit that, but also, if we take Mega Mewtwo Y out of the equation and just look at X completely on its own, I feel like it just does not bring enough to the table to make for a satisfying Mewtwo Mega evolution. Like, if we'd only gotten one Mewtwo Mega and this was it, I feel like a lot of people would have been pretty pissed. It does, however, gain the fighting type, which is a pretty cool part about it, admittedly, and so that kinda helps it to only be at number 4 and not be even lower, but I would still definitely say that this is one of my least favorite Megas. We have officially reached the top 3, and at number 3, we have Mega Medicham. I feel like this one could be a surprise too, because it does feel like a pick that is a little more uniquely me, but basically the gist of how I feel about this Pokemon is that its existence often surprises me. People online often like to talk about forgettable Pokemon, and as someone who talks about Pokemon on YouTube all the time, I don't really have Pokemon I forget. But for whatever reason, whenever I'm looking over some kind of list, or I just happen to come across Mega Medicham while doing research or something, I always have this surprised feeling when I see it, as if I did genuinely forget that it even existed. Its design isn't bad or anything, and don't get me wrong, it's cool that Medicham got a Mega, but for me, the design is evidently, and quite literally, not very memorable to me for whatever reason. And so I kinda just feel like it's gotta be higher on this list by default if I'm always being surprised by the fact that it is actually a Mega evolution that does actually exist. In the runner-up spot at number 2, we have Mega Sharpedo. Mega Sharpedo is so high up on this list, not necessarily for how I feel about it, but instead for what it represents as a Mega. I'd say I'm kinda indifferent on it personally, and I don't have any hate in my heart for it or anything like that, but what I will say is that it is the epitome of the criticisms of Mega Evolution. While Megas are pretty universally loved as a feature, one of the criticisms for it is that all that Megas do is just add spikes to the Pokemon and other similar extra features. Designs like Mega Aerodactyl and Mega Garchomp are classic cases of this, but Mega Sharpedo just takes it to the next level. In fact, the more I have looked at it, the more it feels like it's almost a meme design that was made as a joke because of this criticism. It is totally covered in spikes and sharp edges, and then it also gains a ton of these yellow markings all over its body, which makes for an extremely busy design. It basically just has a ton ton of those stereotypical Mega features, and would certainly be a prime example of that specific criticism of Mega Evolution. And if you are the face of a piece of criticism, you are definitely going to have to be considered one of the worst Megas that are out there. And now it is time for the worst Mega Evolution of them all. And at number 1, I have Mega Rayquaza. Okay, not really, I'm just kidding. My real number 1 is Mega Salamence. Unlike Mega Rayquaza, it might not be too surprising to see Mega Salamence at the top of this list, because it has been heavily criticized pretty much since the moment everyone laid eyes on it. I don't really feel like I need to explain it, but the way its wings turn into this big crescent moon, while its small little legs are tucked away and almost not even visible, just makes this Pokemon look really goofy while it is clearly trying to be the exact opposite. And that's what kinda pushes it over the edge for me. Its intent is to be this very cool, strong, tough beast of a Pokemon, and it comes off as goofy, derpy, and not really intimidating whatsoever, which then makes those traits feel about 10 times worse. As I mentioned throughout the video, goofy Pokemon are great, and cool Pokemon are great. But you begin to enter into a bit of a danger zone when you land into that gray area in the middle, and Mega Salamence to me is just the biggest example of that. It was trying to go completely into the cool direction, but ended up going completely in the goofy direction, and that essentially resulted in it becoming a laughingstock. And so, I would say that overall, it would have to be my pick for the worst Mega Evolution of all time. At least until Legends EA comes out, we'll see what it has to offer. As you may have noticed with that said though, Mega Dragonite did not make this list. Despite its looks, I actually think its origins are really cool and really well thought out. So that was enough to keep it off of the list for me. But you will have to let me know where you would rank it and what your worst Megas are in the comments below. Also, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and remember, this is just my opinion at the end of the day. Thanks so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and until the next one, as always, I will smell you guys later.